Despite the struggles of traditional news outlets, it's a boom time for new media ventures like Ezra Klein's Vox or billionaire Pierre Omidyar's First Look Media. But building a news organization from scratch isn't easy. Vox has yet to deliver on the hype, and now First Look is making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Adam Riley has more.
eBay founder Pierre Omidyar started First Look Media with a bang, hiring muckraker Glenn Greenwald and filmmaker Laura Poitras right after their big scoops on NSA eavesdropping.
We've shown all sorts of invasions into the content of communications.
Omidyar made other big-name hires, too, and promised to cover everything from politics to technology to sports. A year later, First Look has an investigative site called The Intercept, but the rest of Omidyar's vision is unrealized. And now one of those big names has left the company.
I think we've now reached the point where neither party really represents the very poor.
Omidyar lured Matt Taibbi away from Rolling Stone to edit a site called The Racket that would skewer big business. But last week, Taibbi left in a huff. An expose in The Intercept, of all places, said Taibbi chafed at a confounding array of rules, structures, and systems, citing months of constant wrangling, bubbling resentments, and low-level sniping. In a statement, Omidyar said he's still committed to First Look's mission, which may be impossible.
You know, one of the interesting things about this, they're bringing in a lot of this high-priced talent, but they were putting people into a set of skills that they didn't necessarily have. Like Matt Taibbi, who's a huge talent and a little eccentric. We've had him on the show here, and I know his dad, Mike, too. They're both huge talents. But he put him in a management position. He was going to have a staff of team. So one of the things they were concerned about was whether he had those leadership skills. He probably did in some set or other, but he'd never used them before. So they were kind of, I could just imagine how it goes on in a startup there, you know, trying to get all on the same page and following the rules and structures. But, you know, here you bring all these kind of super talents and super egos into one room. They're used to the standards and practices of another news outlet that they've been with, and suddenly everybody sort of wants to fit in, but no one really knows where their piece is.
Well, and one interesting point I read in some coverage of this was that there's these two different ethics at play here, the sort of the ethos of Silicon Valley, where they love this kind of routinized, systematized, highly disciplined way of working, and then the ethos of people like Taibbi or Greenwald, who are used to kind of doing whatever the hell they want. In a non-tech setting, and that those two are really hard to blend. I got to admit to a little schadenfreude here, because as someone who's spent his time working in legacy media outlets, you hear these people when they're getting ready to start something new or be a part of something new, and God bless them for doing it, but they sound like they have, you know, they're the first ones to discover the wheel.
Yes.
Like there was a Taibbi quote to the New York Times from when he left Rolling Stone, like, well, clearly, you know, this is the future of journalism, and I'm excited to be a part of it and you know, help build it for the generations that come after me or something. And I was going back to Rolling Stone, probably a smart move.
There are so many different levels of psychodrama here, and part of it, you know, clearly there was a lot of weird stuff going on internally in this company. And one of the interesting things, there's been some coverage of it, and some of it was by another First Look Media outlet, right? Because there was the Glenn Greenwald investigative outlet that sort of investigated what happened with Matt Taibbi, which they published a long story. It was very strange. It was hard to tell whether it was a whack at Matt Taibbi or an apology for the company. You know, they're covering themselves.
I thought, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with covering yourself if you can do it honestly and in an interesting way. I think there were two interesting points about that long piece that Glenn Greenwald and his colleagues wrote about that incident. One of them was that, you know, some people have speculated that this was done at least in part to throw Matt Taibbi under the bus. And I think there was that.
Probably.
But I also think that part of it is kind of like a cry for help. It's what I mean is it's almost like a memo to Pierre Omidyar saying, look, maybe Matt Taibbi didn't fit in around here, but you're squandering your investment by bringing in these management drones and taking these highly creative people and trying to force them into this Silicon Valley type of system, and you've really got to stop doing this before it's too late. So I don't know.
I think it just comes down to people do not understand how hard it is to build something. Period. And how hard it is to build a news organization, it's really tough. I mean,
we're doing it here. Yeah?
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that when you look around, even for the guys that have been around forever, that was not easy. And so now you think just because you have bazillion dollars, and you have the luxury of hand-picking just, all the top talent, or so you think, and plugging them in some kind of system you think is going to work, it'll come together. It takes a minute.
Yeah, it's a good point because usually money is the issue. And the guy was putting in, what?
$250
million, $250 million. And, even then he had problems and complaints.
Well, a lot of these these new media outlets are bringing in these brand name, big name people. They have egos. Some of them are young and not even that experienced with legacy media organizations, and they come in or they've butted against their legacy media organizations. They've got these big egos. There's obviously going to be a culture clash between them and the big billionaire who owns the outfit.
That's right, and this is totally unfair because starting a startup is very difficult.
Yeah.
But you look at how much journalism Jeff Bezos has gotten for his $250 million buying the Washington Post, as opposed to what Pierre Omidyar has gotten so far. Sometimes it's better to take the car that's already up and running rather than trying to build one from scratch.
But also, let's go back to your point about these people with these egos who we will acknowledge are very, very talented.
Yes.
They are used to working alone. They are
That's
not used to working with 5 or 6 people, and certainly 5 or 6 people saying, you need to put back the pen over here and the notepad there. What?
And it did sound like that kind of thing was going on at first look, right?
Right.
Really small, like expense report haggling and things like that.
Did you take this taxi cab and why?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
All right, good story.